But when these polls, like the Wall Street Journal one, land in the White House and he's losing in all the battleground states.
No, he's not losing in all the battleground states. He's coming up and he's even or doing better. So you know what? Once people start to focus in and they see their two choices, it's obvious that Joe will win this election.
All right.
He's coming up or even doing better. I don't know what that means, but that didn't sound very confident. Joining me now, the man who always gives us the inside baseball stuff on this stuff, Sean Spicer, host of the Sean Spicer Show. Okay, Sean, the polls. Everyone loves polls, right? They love the ones that make their guy look good and they hate ones that make their guy look bad. You actually look at all of them. How do the polls actually look, Sean, and why?
Well, the polls look great if you're Donald Trump. As you know, we run elections that are based on how many states portion their electoral votes, and you need 270 to win. In those state polls, Donald Trump as the host. Remember, this was CBS. This is not exactly going on The First or some conservative-leaning thing. This is a friendly territory that Joe Biden was at. They were basically saying, hey, here's all the battleground polls that show Donald Trump ahead. And she was like, well, it depends. No. All of them. They all show him ahead. Now, that being said, you can make a million excuses. I've been in the game 30 years. I get it. But to deny reality, which is that at this point, poll to poll, state part, I mean, when you look at the 7 to 8 battleground states that will make a difference, which is about 97 electoral votes, Donald Trump is ahead in every single one of them. Now, you can argue that it's early. You can argue that maybe he won't. You can argue a lot of things, but you cannot, as Joe Biden said, argue that he's not ahead. I mean, those are facts.
Okay, why is Joe Biden behind, Sean? So many of us who pay attention aren't surprised by anything Joe Biden's doing. He's exactly the guy we thought he was going to be if that disaster got elected. So we got elected and did everything a Democrat does, and now voters are unhappy. Explain it to someone like me who's frustrated with voters who made this choice the last time.
So remember the other day when we had an eclipse and they told you that you needed glasses to look up?
Yes.
Well, I hope you saved them, because that's the answer to your question. When you look at the Biden administration, you need eclipse glasses. You cannot look at it and go, it freaks your eyes out. It freaks your brain out. You've got illegal immigration. The economy's still got problems everywhere. And when you look overseas is a disaster. We're not energy independent anymore. Interest rates are still way too high to put home ownership out of the reach of so many Americans. Gas prices are on the reach. I mean, you literally need eclipse glasses to look at the Biden record. And that's why, because here's the thing. And I watched some media pundits over last weekend ask the same question. And the reality is that Biden presented himself to the American people, granted from his basement in Delaware last cycle, saying, listen, everything that's happened with Donald Trump, I can bring the country together. I can right all of these wrongs. I can do all these great things. And he promised fairy dust. And the reality is that now Americans and voters throughout the country can look and say, here's 4 years of Donald Trump and here's 4 years of Joe Biden. Which do I like better? As was coined decades ago, are you better off 4 years ago? And the answer unequivocally in every single instance and case is no, you are not better off under Joe Biden. And so that's the simple answer. I mean, the simple answer is that it is not a hypothesis. It is not an experiment. It is not a nebulous question about whose policies will help you more. You can literally compare apples to apples and say, who did a better job protecting the country, growing the economy, adding to your family and your community's prosperity, keeping the country safe both domestically and abroad. Full stop on every issue, Trump wins.
Eric, let's talk about a couple swing states, Sean. I know there are other things we have to get to, nitty-gritty things like Arizona, Georgia, actually, both of them combined. Why are there 2 Democrat senators in these, quote, swing states that we anticipate winning? If I'm on the outside looking in and I'm trying to be king cynic, we think we're going to take Arizona. The poll numbers look good. We think we're going to take Georgia. But Senator Raphael Warnock would take issue with that. What happened with these states?
Well, each is a little unique. In the case of Georgia, I mean, Warnock in particular, I think we did ourselves a disservice after the last election. We should have made it clear how important it was for people to get out and vote. We scared them into thinking that their vote wasn't going to count, and the Democrats took advantage of that. That's number one. No, and just so we're clear, were there problems with how Georgia handled their elections? Yes, and I'm not trying, but at the end of the day, we ceded the ground to them and they won, and we would not have the Biden nominees that we had Warnock lost. Like if we had Loeffler and Perdue still in, we wouldn't have the problems that we have now. The nominees wouldn't have gotten through. We ceded a lot of ground to them. We didn't stay focused on Georgia as an election. We were still getting the presidential election. And frankly, that was a mistake. And I get it. There was issues, and I'm not trying to undermine those issues, but I'm just saying that we should have been able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Arizona is a bit of a unique situation as well. I don't think we ran the strongest candidate there. And we paid the price for it. There's something that I coined a phrase back in the 90s where I said mechanics matter, meaning that you still have to get out there and run a good campaign. And there's a lot of people who say, well, Trump, he was at the top of the ticket. He hurt us. He helped us, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, whether you're running for Congress, governor, senator, you still need to be a good candidate, have a good message, and have good mechanics. You need to have a good ground game. You need to run a good get out the vote effort. You have to have an early vote effort, et cetera, et cetera. We call AB chase, meaning that you have to have an absentee ballot chase program for those people who have a history of voting early or by absentee. And in a lot of cases, the campaigns sucked. And that's it. And you've got to remember that, when you look at a lot of these close elections, you mentioned Arizona and Georgia in the Senate races, but then you look at Michigan and Pennsylvania at the presidential level, and you're talking 10,000-ish votes, right? So I'm not a big football guy at the college level because I went to a D3 school. But this is, a football stadium in most of these places at Penn State or in a lot of these SEC schools would blow that away. These elections are coming down to less than a football stadium on a good Saturday afternoon. And that's the thing, is that if the campaign doesn't have their act together, they're not going to be able to pull off a tight election. And that's frankly the case in both Arizona, and then presidentially in a lot of these big states as well.
All right, but before we go, let's talk real quickly about Wisconsin. This is such a critical swing state. You win Wisconsin, you really are in the driver's seat to be sitting in the White House, and if you don't, you're in trouble. We have Senator Ron Johnson there. He's one of the furthest right senators in the United States Senate, and they just banned Zuckerbucks there. Should I be thinking highly of Wisconsin right now?
Yes. But I'll tell you, you brought up Ron Johnson, and I'm going to tell you exactly the opposite of what I said about Georgia and Arizona. Ron Johnson ran in a textbook campaign. He raised a ton of money. He had a great team. He executed perfectly. And so at a time when everybody said Ron Johnson was going to be left for dust, he focused on mechanics. He had a great message, and he worked his tail off, and he reaped the benefits of it. Wisconsin is ripe for the picking for all the aforementioned reasons. They actually are correcting a lot of the wrongs that happened there voting-wise. And so I feel very good about Wisconsin. I think you're right. If we can pick off Wisconsin, keep Georgia, put it back in the column, and keep Arizona in the column. In particular, I would keep an eye on Georgia because the evangelical effort that people like Ralph Reed are leading to not only register but mobilize evangelical voters that have not voted before is tremendous in states like Georgia. Wisconsin, again, is another state that's ripe to put back in our column. If that happens, Donald Trump's guaranteed another term.